Good YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, we have some very, very interesting, shocking news to me. As Olympic gold medalist, retired Hall of Famer, iconic superstar boxer, former pound-for-pound king turned colorful analyst for ESPN and top-ranked legendary promoter Bob Arum. With that said, I'm talking about none other than Andre S.O.G. Ward, who is 32 wins, no losses, no draws. Andre Ward, he weighed in on Terence Crawford, undefeated, 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed champion, currently the WBO welterweight world champion, who's widely considered by many to be the #1 pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, in Terence Bud Crawford. 37 wins, no losses, no draws, 27 big wins by way of knockout. Terence Crawford is 33 years of age, stands at 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach. Terence Crawford, he will be taking on two-time welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Showtime Shawn Porter, who is 31 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, 15 wins by way of knockout, 33 years of age, stands at 5'7" with a 69-inch arm reach. The fight is scheduled to take place November 20th, Las Vegas, Nevada, Mandalay Bay Arena. With that said, Andre Ward was asked about a showdown between Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter. Now, Andre Ward, he finished his career 32 wins, 0 losses, 0 draws, 16 wins by way of knockout. He wasn't seen as a big puncher. And 2 interesting statements was made by Andre Ward at this point in time. Andre Ward was asked by Fight Hype if he would actually weigh in on this fight, because he is an analyst for ESPN, and he knows that essentially he has to straddle the fence. Shout out to Ben from Fight Hype from putting that out there, because it put Andre Ward in a position where he had to respond. And Andre Ward, he said, first things first, I'm not a company man. I'm going to always keep it 100. I'm going to always speak my truth. I'm not a company's man. Right? So he let that be known. Then Andre Ward, he stated that he will somewhat give a prediction. The reason he won't give an actual prediction, or he'll stay away from it, and he won't give any tips or pointers to Terence Crawford or to Shawn Porter, is because of his friendship with both guys. And so he says that just made the better man win. But here's where it got shocking. Is Andre Ward, he said that Shawn Porter, with only 15 knockouts in his career, has the ability to knock out Terence Crawford. That's shocking. Now, we know Terence Crawford has the ability to knock out Shawn Porter, because Terence Crawford, he's knocked out his last 6 opponents. Terence Crawford, out of his 37 fights, he has 27 knockouts. So only 10 of his fights didn't go without a knockout. They went to the decision, okay? Only 10. That's very, very impressive, and it's underrated. But now, to Andre Ward's defense, he says that both these fighters can end this in knockout. Now, he did say, which is surprising because we know Shawn Porter's never been knocked out. And Andre Ward, he reiterated the sentiments that I always say, is that Shawn Porter arguably has the best resume, not named Manny Pacquiao, still active fighters in the sport of boxing. And Shawn Porter has never been knocked out, and he's never been dominated in any fight. All his losses are razor-close thin losses. That coming at the hands of, his first loss was back in 2013, 2014, when he lost his title, his IBF title, International Boxing Federation title, to British superstar boxer Kell Brook, okay? Then he lost a very close, thin fight to former unified welterweight world champion superstar boxer Keith one-time Thurman. And then he lost a very razor-close thin fight to now undefeated, unified WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer, who is widely considered by many to be top 3 best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, in Earl the True Spence Jr., okay? And Earl Spence Jr., he separated himself in that fight in the 11th round, knocking Shawn Porter down. And then in the 12th round, he clearly dominated the 12th round. He clearly separated himself in the championship rounds, which saw him get the victory, okay? So what's shocking is that Andre Ward is saying that Shawn Porter, who's never been viewed as a big puncher, can knock out Terence Crawford. Okay? And then he goes as far as to say this fight, in his opinion, right now as it stands, now it may change later on down the line as the fight gets closer, but he says right now as it stands, he believes that it's not going to a decision, that somebody's getting knocked out, which means he thinks that Shawn Porter has the ability to knock out Terence Crawford. Now, what's shocking is, again, Shawn Porter never displayed that type of punching power. Shawn Porter is a guy that presses you every second of every minute of every round. Okay? He outworks his opponents. He overwhelms his opponents. Okay? That's how he gets his victories. In his losses, because of his style of overwhelming his opponents, he also overwhelms his own offense and smothers his own offense, which at times it could look like he's not accurate. Okay? He's not effective. Okay? And you may miss some of the clean punches unless it's in slow motion or replay that he's landing, because he's so active that you miss a lot of his work. So we know Terence Crawford has knocked out his last 6 opponents. Terence Crawford is very versatile. He can switch from orthodox to southpaw very fluidly. Terence Crawford, can outbox his opponents. He's very versatile. So Andre Ward, he believes that you're going to see everything from Terence Crawford, not just Terence Crawford looking to outbox, keep his distance, control the pace and the range of the fight against Shawn Porter, as most people feel like that's the most effective way to beat Shawn Porter. So he says that he believes that Terence Crawford is going to mix it up, which I believe Terence Crawford is going to have to mix it up, because he's not going to have a choice, because Shawn Porter is going to push him into that position. Okay? Now, another interesting note is that both Andre Ward and Ben from Fight Hype, they believe that this fight is only happening because of Shawn Porter. If Shawn Porter didn't press for this fight, the fight wouldn't be happening. Well, that is a testament to Terence Crawford not being very active when it comes to pursuing this quote-unquote other side of the street, which we do know exists, okay? It has always exists in the sport of boxing. This has always been a thing when you have rival promoters, rival networks not wanting to come together to do business. This has always been in existence, okay? And so here we have a situation where both guys are ingredients that Shawn Porter is the reason this fight is happening, okay? But where I disagree with Andre Ward is when Andre Ward, he says, well, Shawn Porter is cut from a different cloth, unlike the other guys. That's incorrect. It's the fact that Shawn Porter, okay, yes, he's a dog, because Andre Ward, he says, well, Shawn Porter and his team are team players. They're not worried about the other side of the street. They're throwback fighters. Well, no. Then you're saying that Terence Crawford is not a team player and that he's not a throwback fighter indirectly, because if that's the case, why isn't Terence Crawford going above and beyond to cross the other side of the street as well? So you're saying that Shawn Porter is willing to go above and beyond to cross the other side of the street. He's a throwback fighter. Well, why isn't Terence Crawford going above and beyond to cross the other side of the street? Because Terence Crawford, he let it be known that not just 8-division legendary iconic Filipino superstar boxer Manny Pacquiao was his number one objective, but also Keith Thurman was his number one objective, because he said in order to be the man, you have to beat the man, and that man is Keith Thurman. So why hasn't he pressed to get the fight with Keith Thurman? Yes, Keith Thurman has been inactive, but Keith Thurman, he has one loss, that coming at the hands of Manny Pacquiao. So the two guys, his number one objective was to fight Keith Thurman and Manny Pacquiao. They fought each other, and Manny Pacquiao, July 2019, beat Keith Thurman via split decision. So it was a very close fight. It's the only loss on Keith Thurman's resume. Okay, he lost his WBC title, World Boxing Council title, due to inactivity when Mauricio Sulaiman, president of WBC, he decided that he and the board that it was the right decision to strip Keith Thurman because of inactivity. Okay, so where was the urgency for Terence Crawford to push to make a fight happen with Keith Thurman? Because if that's the case, we got to look at it from this standpoint. If Terence Crawford, in his own words, is saying that Keith Thurman is the man to beat, well, that means Keith Thurman is the A side, and that means that Terence Crawford should be pursuing Keith Thurman, and he did not aggressively pursue Keith Thurman. As a matter of fact, he allowed his promoter, Bob Arum, to say that Keith Thurman is not worth more than $1 million guaranteed purse, and that he would allow Terence Crawford to find another promoter and another network to promote a fight with Keith Thurman and Terence Crawford, and he'll show them both that he'll get a ticket ringside to watch them lose money. So he allowed his promoter to not make the two biggest fights in his career, as we already know the history with Bob Arum and Manny Pacquiao and Terence Crawford, as he stated that he knew how that fight was going to end. Manny Pacquiao was a close friend of his. He didn't want to see him get hurt, and he didn't want to put up the necessary purses for that fight because he didn't feel like he was going to get a return on the investment, that it wasn't going to sell because Terence Crawford is just simply not a big draw. Terence Crawford doesn't participate in promoting the fight, and he lost as much money on Terence Crawford, so much so that he could build a mansion from scratch in Beverly Hills. So we know how he feels about Terence Crawford, and Terence Crawford sat idle and allowed his promoter to not make the two biggest fights that he was seeking out, Keith Thurman and Manny Pacquiao. So if you're going to say that Shawn Porter is a throwback fighter, and you're going to say that Shawn Porter aggressively pursues the best fights and they're team players, well then indirectly you're saying Terence Crawford is not, because everybody alludes to the fight between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, which makes up for the biggest fight in the sport of boxing, and everybody loves to place the blame on Errol Spence and say Errol Spence is not aggressively pursuing Terence Crawford. But Errol Spence, he's still aggressively pursuing the plans he laid forth before Terence Crawford was even a thought of a possibility of a fight, when Terence Crawford was still in the lower weight classes. And that was, for him, he had similar objectives, was to get Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence and Keith Thurman in the ring. And we know how that played out, okay? He eventually was going to land the Manny Pacquiao fight. So with that said, he also states that he don't let anybody dictate what his outcome is, that being Shawn Porter. Well, you're incorrect in saying that as well, Andre Ward, because Shawn Porter, when this fight was being talked about, Shawn Porter just recently stated he sat back and let the business of boxing take its toll. So you're incorrect when you say Shawn Porter is not going to be a company man as far as it comes to PBC and Al Heyman, founder and advisor, Premier Boxing Champions. He has his own brain, is what Andre Ward stated. Well, that's not the case, because Shawn Porter, he said he's going to sit back and let the business part of the sport of boxing, meaning Al Heyman and his father, trainer, and manager, Kenny Porter, handle their business. And Kenny Porter was saying that they had to go in a different direction after they initially pursued the fight with Terence Crawford, when he sat down with Bob Arum and it didn't feel like it was going nowhere. And he told Shawn Porter that he had to figure out a different opponent because that wasn't going to work out. So therefore, you know, when Shawn Porter stated that his number one objective was Terence Crawford. So we see how this could play out, okay? But when it comes to, you know, the competition in the ring, when he stated that Shawn Porter can knock out Terence Crawford, I don't see that. Now, maybe he sees lapses in Terence Crawford's defense, as many people do, as well as myself. Yes, Terence Crawford does have these lapses, but I believe that Terence Crawford, he fights down defensively wise to the level of his opposition. If he feels like you a serious risk to hurting him, he won't stay in the pocket like he did Victor Postol, Jose Benavidez Jr. You know, certain guys he'll pick and choose when he stays in the pocket. And then when he feels like he's not in any danger of getting knocked out, he'll fight in the pocket, okay? And that could possibly be the case. He may feel the need to want to make a statement against Shawn Porter and stay in the pocket and make it a much more of a dogfight than he needs to. And I can see that happening. But I don't see Shawn Porter knocking out Terence Crawford. But I cannot wait to see this fight. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
You're watching Blue Blood Sports TV. Wow.